So what I'm going to talk to you about is a gig I did, and I was able to look at the event operations and get great photos of them. And what I want to do is to ensure that when you go to your next event, you actually look at the operations. If you're a student or you're just starting an event, you must look at the operations. They are invisible generally for an audience. The idea is just to get the audience to look at the stage at these things. But your job as an event manager or working in events is to understand how the operations actually look like, what they look like, how they all fit together, and some of the language that is used. So I was lucky enough to have this gig looking at the risk of a venue. So it was interesting job looking at the sort of things that can go wrong. And don't forget, operations, really, when there's a problem with operations, that can lead to all kinds of problems, including the end of your career. That's why it's important. Okay, so when people arrive at a venue, it's generally, this is what they see, the car park. When you look at how well this is set out, this is really well set out, and also the lights, etc. So some people will arrive by public transport, but in this case they didn't because there wasn't any. So you've got to understand how many cars can fit in, therefore how many people can come to your venue, the car park. That's inside the venue. A number of things to immediately look at is the seats, see the seating and the aisles, how wide the aisles are, and you can see the hard hat zone. And this is, of course, during setup time. And the reason for that is that that's a very high roof there. The reason for the high roof is so you can have the tiered seating like that and people can see. And then you have the corporate boxes up the top here. And if you don't know what they are, look them up. Okay. This is when the gig is on, the concert has started, and I'll be showing you a little bit about that. And I'll go through what you can see up here. There's a lot of things. And these are the things that you should be looking at when you go to an event. One of them, which is a very modern one, really is this curved hanging sound speakers, right? It's called a line array, and it's a good example of modern acoustics. It's to ensure that everybody gets the same quality of sound, theoretically, in the audience, and has huge amounts of mathematics to it. And the sound people are highly expert in these things. You're not meant to know everything about sound by any means, but to know some things is very important, and they will treat you with a certain amount of respect if you have an understanding of the terminology. Not all of it, but just enough. And here you can see the line array out the front here. So this is when the crowd gets there. A few things to notice when you come to this sort of area that's out the front of the venue. First, the signage. Now, people forget about this. When you put up signs, often you'll put up signs where you can see them, but once you've got a crowd there, nobody gets to see them. So you've got to put up signs where everyone can see it when there is a crowd. So keep that in mind. How many queues there are, how long people take to arrive. This is simple mathematics, and it is, believe me, it is worked out very, very well, things like this. How long to take a search, how long will they stand in this queue? Because that can lead to an unhappy or a happy audience. One of the issues at this gig was these scanners. They were a real pain. People didn't understand how to use them, and so the staff spent their whole time trying to explain people how to use them. And when they did the maths on that one, they realised it's a lot easier just to have staff to collect the tickets or to look at the tickets. Here's back of house. Once again, this is a thing that you won't necessarily see, but as an event person, you should look around for things like that. Where is back of house? It's secure. It's within the venue area, the back of the venue. You can see there's access there and roads out the back there. And this is where, of course, the staff can eat and relax, and it can be sign on, sign off. It depends on how you use things like that, but you can see there's air conditioning around it. There's a bit of comfort. And it's a dining room. Okay, but do notice the generators here. They're extremely important in events. Always have a look around for the generators. And this is next to that. So this is an area here where there's storage, right? These are crowd barriers. They come in a variety of names. But they'll have a lot of storage space and they need the storage space. Now, that means things have got to arrive, they've got to be unloaded. The truck has to get in from off the road up here, which means you need security at the entrance. These days, you need security for absolutely everything. And then you have the loading or unloading of the trucks. And don't forget, you've got to load them up again at the end. So there has to be some sort of schedule for that. And you've got to think about breakdowns. What happens if something goes wrong? Because often these are narrow areas. All right, so also what you've got is a lot of staff, particularly at these venues, huge number of staff actually. And because of security, once again, the big cost for events these days, you've got to have security at the staff entrance. Okay, this poor guy, which means the whole thing. Here's the enormous number of things hanging from the roof there, the boxes down. There's an enormous amount of activity going on, by the way. You'd be surprised the number of people here. There's people cleaning while they're doing that because the clean workspace is so vital when you've got all these boxes, etc., being rolled around. You've got people in their protective equipment, except for that guy, and all these cables and chains, etc., hanging from the ceiling. So you can imagine how dangerous this sort of area is. Okay. And you can see from the roof how many, all the trusses there, these things up here, these geometric things. And you've got chains hanging from the roof. Okay, they're going to be used, cables and chains, used to haul up the sound equipment like these things here, the line arrays, plus the LED screens. And they're done by chain motors, by the way. Now, once again, you don't need to know all the language, but it's a good idea to get a bit of a handle on the language that's used in the venue during the setup if you're running events. So we'll go back outside again. This is the pathway from the car park to the venue. So you've got security there. I think we're coming in. That's correct. We're coming into the venue. And there's our security. Interestingly, they left all these, I'm not too sure why they left these things here after or during the performance, because not as though people are arriving, but they did. Anyway, the reason being that they can be quite not overly dangerous, but people do trip on them. And people have broken their legs, by the way, on these things. They do trip on these things, and they're called bridge type feet or bridge type ones. You can get flat ones that you'll see at the beginning at the entranceway. They have flat ones. Once again, what looks like a minor thing, but it can cause enormous troubles, by the way. And okay, so there's the tunnel. That's how people get in. They come in under the road. A few things about the tunnel are interesting. There wasn't any sound system in there. I was quite surprised. I thought there'd be speakers so that people can, you can tell people what's happening. And cameras, there weren't any cameras. And of course, drainage. Not that it rains a lot there, but still. So here we have I just get these things out of the way, sorry. Here, what you have here is outside the venue. Once again, there's the crowd has arrived and they're all coming in. And here we've got security, and then we've got the bouncers, the boys with the big muscles, and staff ID, etc. I think this was the staff entrance, by the way. So back inside, we've got what's called the front of house, and these have all the sound and light desks and the computer equipment. And it's an incredibly engineering feat, really. And you can imagine the number of cables that go from A to B on things like this as well. So there's a very specialist area, and you can see how it's roped off. And generally they have security here as well. What else? Note the boxes once again. I keep stressing this because it's often forgotten that the boxes don't disappear once you take something out of them. And in this case, we have a safety officer on site as well. The big thing about these events is the LED screens that enables you to get to 10,000 people rather than 1,000. So you've got cameras when you've got this sort of stuff. You've got cameras in the audience, cameras on the stage. Here we have what's called a cherry picker, which is a guy up there who's checking those screens. And don't forget, they're all hung from the ceiling. Yeah. And what they have to do, this is a whole specialist area like other lighting and like sound, like security. All these things have now branched out into specific specialist areas, but it's a good idea for you to know at least some of the terminology. And what they're doing here is checking those screens and some of the terminology for LED screens, right? There's things like calibrating, which is what they're doing, and latency, and you'll have to look those sort of things up. Once again, we go back to here. Now, what they're doing here is constructing a camera stage, right? A platform for the cameras. Okay, and you'll find this at a lot of events these days. And so keep an eye out for scaffolding around an event site. It'll tell you a lot, actually. And what's here, there's different laws on this, and this all has to do with construction law, by the way, in the country, wherever you are. So keep an eye out. This guy, as you can see, has a person down below the ladder. That's one of the rules in some countries that, and they're all doing well. But what you've got here is a guy working underneath him, which is a big no-no, a big no-no. But it's a good example of what happens when you have different suppliers. On one hand, you've got construction guys here who are building the stage, and then you've got sound engineers or sound people underneath, and they don't necessarily understand each other's roles or the legality of what they're doing. And yeah. Okay, generators. Now, check out the generators when you go to an event. They're just sitting there silently, being ignored generally. And in this case, they had 3 generators, and they click in if they're needed. Okay. So they've got fencing around them, or scrim, I think they call it, this sort of type of fencing. It's just to block it off so that people don't wander in. And here we have 3-phase power cables. Okay, that's a lot of power, by the way, and quite dangerous, 3-phase. So you can see here, we look at it close up, they have a covering. Now, once again, because big events now are so common, and there's suppliers, specialist suppliers, they all have their own language. In this case, this, which used to be called a cable covering, is now called a multi-channel low-profile cable protector. And just to finish off on this bit, the electricity is vital in an event, and this should be able to be accessed at any time. Okay, that's the emergency stop button for the generator. So we'll go on now. I'll just show you a little bit of the actual show.